I'll find peace and strength, leave the past behind me. Don't be alarmed, the dawn is almost here. I just want to sing sad songs till the break of dawn, with the guitar rolling me. Clear night sky, firelight, my eye, demon, let me be. But he don't know I'll never let go of the ones who set me free. I just want to sing sad songs till the church bells tone, and I'll leave this devil behind me. Whoa, behind me.
Hey, thank you so much for joining the inaugural edition of Hope, Resilience, and Action with Mike Aschinger. I'm Mike Aschinger, a retired Army Sergeant Major, former law enforcement officer, and a person who's been through some tragedy myself. I work in the world of suicide prevention casually. I take calls when I can, work with veterans, but this podcast is dedicated to some heroes, some real true heroes that I've come across in life that have stories that I hope inspire you. So let's start with episode number 1. You're about to hear from Kristen Abrahamson, my cousin, one of the greatest heroes that I know. So her bio, and I want to read this to you, and this came from her husband. So Kristen is the oldest of 5 girls and possesses a mother's caretaking nature towards basically everyone she approaches. She is charismatic, warm, and unfailingly kind. She is skilled and dedicated dancer, mother to an angel, and an unbelievably devoted wife. She has seen more than her fair share of tragedy and yet remains steadfast in her commitment to making people feel validated, as well as making the world a better place. So without further ado, I'd like you to hear from Kristen about the tragic loss of her son, Kash. Kristen, thank you so much for being here. You are awesome.
Thank you.
I did already give your impressive bio. I want to start off by humble bragging a bit, though, because I know dancing is kind of your thing.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if you're aware, I'm the 2014 and 2015 Dancing Dad champion for
It's you.
Brenda's School of Dance. That was me. So not trying to steal all your thunder, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Steal away. That is a big deal.
2 of my favorite things in the world that I own. So, well, Kristen, thank you for being with us today. You're the first one of what will be 12 people who are here to talk about stories that hopefully inspire others who are going through really difficult stuff.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, no, it's a tough topic, and it takes courage just to come on and talk about it. But as you know, there are a lot of people that could probably use to hear sometimes that they're not alone out there. So with that said, I have 5 questions. It's going to be the same 5 for every person. I have tissue handy in case you make me cry.
I probably should, but I'm just going to cry.
So this is something that, yeah, I will tell you just to start from my end. I was driving in my squad car the day I found out the story that you're about to tell us. And it was the only time I've ever talked to your dad and he didn't know what to do or say. And so that's when I found out your story. But if you wouldn't mind, would you mind telling us your story?
Yeah. There's probably a lot of this that I could tell, but I'm going to skip over the first hard thing in my life and jump to the big, hard, life-changing thing in my life. So in April of 2017, I found out that I was 5 months pregnant, and I had been taking birth control, and I was told I would never have kids. So it was a real fun surprise at my annual appointment. The father, who I probably won't talk too much about today for his own involvement, which I'll touch on later, wanted to at that point be a dad and move in together and do this whole family thing. And so we committed to doing that. And then July 17th of 2017, I woke up 9 months pregnant, 39 weeks, which is 1 week away from full term for anyone who doesn't know. And my baby wasn't moving. It was a boy. We knew from the very first ultrasound because I was very far along. I took a fast shower. I called my mom, who was up in Idaho. I called my dad. I woke up the baby's biological father and told him that we needed to go to the hospital. And I knew in that moment that something was very wrong and he wasn't with us anymore. And we get to the hospital and they accept you like they have to, and then they put the belly band heart monitor on you and they have an ultrasound tech come in, and you can see on the ultrasound, if you've paid attention to the ones before, that it's different than all of the other ones. His little heart's not fluttering. There's still no movement from him. And I was very fortunate in that my doctor had actually just delivered another baby. Like, he was wrapping up as I was getting there. And so he came in very shortly after to tell me that my baby had passed away and that I would have to deliver him. So he is a wonderful doctor, gave me a hug, cried with me, and then left the room so that we could decide how to move forward. My dad showed up. I'm guessing he called you between when I told him and when he showed up at the hospital. And all four of my sisters showed up. Well, three. One of them was in Argentina. And I got to talk to her on the phone and tell her everything that was happening. It was really hard for her because she's been a labor and delivery nurse for most of her nursing career. We told the biological father's family, and his parents decided to fly out, and they were in the state of Washington. So they got there about 20 minutes before we had him, or I had him. We decided to break my water, and 10 hours after they broke my water, Kash Ray Scar was born, very silently. The loudest silence you'll ever hear into this world. And that is, in short, the story that changed my life.
It's hard to hear years later. Kash is a big part of our family. He's included in what we do, trying to empathize. We've had 6 pregnancy losses early term, and those hit pretty hard to the point where we stopped telling people we were pregnant. I don't remember when we would even tell people we were pregnant, but it was later on because
April held it in for a while.
She did, and trying to empathize is impossible. But I remember the heartbreak. I can't imagine being that close to term and then having to deal with the loss that you dealt with. And I know you've turned it around into a lot of positive stuff, and I really appreciate that. And to me, that makes you a hero. But I know it's not all easy, and that it's been a journey that we're all on. If you wouldn't mind telling in as many or as few as you'd like, just people out there so they can understand, what were some of your darkest times, if you don't mind me asking, as you went through and processed grief and trauma?
Yeah. So thinking about that question, because I was lucky enough to get these questions in advance, the biggest thing is that it never goes away, but people don't talk about it. And so we're 7.5 years after I had Kash, and this Christmas was one of the hardest ones I've had for no apparent reason. But in the beginning, there was a day after his first birthday. My parents had moved from the house I grew up in to the house they live in now. And I was driving down, it's a really big, windy canyon hill. And I was driving down, and I just had this thought that it would be so much if I just drove off the cliff, because then I would get to be with Kash and I wouldn't have to feel the weight and the anguish of not being with him every day, because it is an all day, everyday thing. It doesn't get easier, it just becomes a part of your life. There are things that are easier. School years get easier. The first one was hard. because I was very blessed to have a sister I was pregnant with at the same time. And her son was born 52 days after Kash was. So I have a very, very physical reminder of where Kash would be in life. But a lot of those firsts are really, really difficult. But that was definitely, it had to have been like August or September of 2018 where I just didn't want to live anymore. And had the I had the forethought to call um Derek and say, "Hey, I want to drive off a cliff right now and I don't think that's the right thing. Can you help me through that?" Just stay on the phone with me so that I don't. And he did, which was wonderful, but also I'm sure a terrifying phone call, but that was definitely the darkest moment.
That's such a huge deal and something I've tried to practice. It's something I preach regularly to people when I work with suicide interventions, is just having somebody that's your break in case of fire emergency glass person that you
Yeah.
can call.
Yeah.
And thank you for making that call, because I know that call is not easy to make.
No.
But it,
Especially when you're in such a dark place where you already don't feel like staying on the road is a better option. Like making yourself do something to fight against what every fiber of your being is telling you to do and all the voices in your head. It's hard, but it's worth it.
no, thanks for sharing that. I mean, there's people right now, and I truly hope that this podcast reaches out and touches people who might be in that spot.
I
And
hope so too.
so to all of them, we'll move on to advice in a bit, but have someone to call. And if in a pinch you got nobody, shoot me a message on the socials wherever you found this, okay? And I'm
Yeah.
sure
Same.
I think we've shared support over the years together. So
Yeah.
you're somebody that I've reached out to when I was having a rough time at one point. So
Same.
anything else, any other times that the going has gotten really tough since your loss,
Um,
which I know I've said it before, but I do want to add in here. I'm so sorry for your loss, Kristen.
I know. You and your family have always been very supportive, which actually triggered the memory I wanted to talk about next anyway.
Yeah,
And inclusive, which is something that doesn't happen a lot, which is the other big, very big dark time, and why I don't talk about his biological father a lot. I grieve very openly and very honestly, and it's sometimes really intense and really raw and hard. Like it's not a fun, cozy, hurrah type deal, but it's real and it's raw and it's something that I know that other people go through. A, because I've seen them, B, because I've helped them, and C, because I'm going through it. Like it's real. So I have always opted to grieve very publicly because Kash is a part of my life and I don't want to hide that. I don't want to hide the grief. I don't want to hide the pain. Like it's very real. And most days it's very manageable and sometimes it's not. But another very big hard thing was that because I grieve so publicly, his biological father and their family, they did not like that and they asked me to stop doing that as publicly. So I created a
really.
whole, yeah, I created a whole
How do you ask
separate.
somebody that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it was more of a you have to stop doing this. It wasn't really an ask. It was a you have to stop doing this because I'm uncomfortable with it. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. So instead, I just created a page that they didn't follow. I still have it active on social media, but I don't post there anymore. As life progressed, I realized that that was really stupid. But like survival mode, you is like, no, I just want to keep grieving how I grieve. So I still have that page, but I just include it in my life now. So I would just post all of my thoughts about grief or any time, and anyone who experienced this will know this feeling your arms wake up and they just ache. And it's not like you worked out and you are sore because you did something amazing or you're tired. It's just like your soul is longing for that part of you that is not here. So I would post about that. I would post pictures of his birthday, which your family has been to multiple times, and I love that you guys come to that. I know that because of your beautiful wife, I've actually met a lot of people in the child loss community, and I think about them often. But they told me not to post publicly, so I posted to a site that they don't follow and just kept doing it because everyone grieves so differently, and you
Yeah.
don't get to tell someone else how to do it. I won't say there's no wrong way, because I think that not acknowledging the grief is the wrong way. Like, you have to process it and work through it, even if it's something minor. Like, you have to acknowledge the grief, you have to acknowledge the pain, you have to deal with that, for lack of putting it
Yeah.
bluntly.
No,
You have to deal with it.
no, it was talking about grieving differently. My wife certainly grieves very differently.
Yeah.
She's a conservative Iowa farm girl at the end of the day. She actually, one of the groups that she was in, I don't remember which one, but she kind of got bullied out of the group for that
That's so horrible.
because she didn't grieve openly enough. And it was shocking to see, even in the support community, that you still have to be careful, because
Yeah.
there are people that try to go make it their own and make it their own personal club, when it's really supposed to be a place just for everybody that's healing differently. Like,
It should be,
that's,
absolutely. It is
yeah,
very sad that there are people who try to make it like a grief competition,
yeah,
well, this was my trauma, so mine's worse than yours. But at the end of the day, trauma is trauma and loss is loss. And truly, everyone will grieve and honor and remember differently. And
yeah.
I choose to remember honestly and openly.
No, and it's been so illuminating to read your posts over the years since this happened. It's helped me. I actually turned your page on, and this was many years ago, but I had a person I was dealing with in the suicide prevention world who had lost a teenage kid. And after reading some of what you had been through, that person kind of commented that I feel, bear with me here because this one's going to get the waterworks going, but the person I was dealing with goes, "Oh my gosh, I feel so ashamed that I feel so bad." Here he goes. But I got 16 years with my kid, and I can't imagine not having had that 16 years was exactly how it went. And but your posts were very inspiring to that person, who will remain nameless forever because that person is asked not to be
Yep.
named. But
Anonymity.
yeah, I mean, that person was another person I talked to about this podcast, and just wasn't going to be able to do it. And it's hard. It's really hard to come and share this with anybody,
Yeah.
much less whatever audience we can get here. So I want to talk about hope, because hope is one of my things. I think
Yep.
hope is it. That's my 2 cents. When I work with people, back when I was in law enforcement, I used to arrest people. I always tried to do the dog, the bounty hunter thing, because a lot of times the people that I was arresting who were involved in those elements just had lost hope. And that was the biggest, like, common theme. It wasn't like bad people. It was just like people that had no vision, no hope for a future. And I would sit there, I'd play Bob Marley almost always. And I usually had a long drive to the jail, and I would sometimes I'd even kind of spin around just to keep talking to them. And I would try to, like, whatever, like, what in the perfect world, if you had $1 million that just landed in your lap or whatever, what would you be doing with your life? Like, what would really make you happy? And really try to get people talking about hope. And I think hope is salvational. I know hope has saved me in my life. I have my one dark time, and I will talk about that a few months from now. But in my darkest time, I remember hope seemed very elusive, and all that stood in front of me was dark and negative, and I didn't see a way around it. So, do you remember feeling no hope? And is there any way you can articulate the feeling of hopelessness to
Yeah.
us? Because I don't know that I knew I was even feeling it, but I knew the absence of it when I started to think about it.
I
So,
will do my best. There's been 2 times in my life where I have felt completely hopeless, and I think because of the first one, I was able to recognize it with Kash. Um, the first was in the first life altering moment when I was married and going through a divorce and felt like there was no way out and I was never going to end. Um, and it is dark. It is isolating. Um, you lose yourself to the hopelessness. And it might not even be hopelessness that you lose yourself to. You just lose yourself because you are so unused to the unrecognizable person that you see when you look in the mirror. Because whatever your circumstance may be that has landed you in this hopelessness spot, you no longer recognize the carefree you, the person you were, even though sometimes life would throw you curveballs, like you could still see the other side. You could see the rainbow. You could see the blue skies. Like it usually happens relatively slowly, but in my situation with Kash, it happened within a matter of moments. And after going through my divorce and first marriage, I adopted the phrase, why not me? Like if I why why wouldn't this happen to me? Whoa, sorry about that. Why
That's all
wouldn't
right.
this happen to me? Like if I this happened to me so that I can help someone else. And so because I had been living the last close to 10 years of my life with a why not me? Why not me? It well, I did have those dark, super hopeless moments because my nephew was going to be, I'll just hold it, because my nephew was going to be born. I said, well, why not me? I'm so glad that this happened to me instead of my baby sister, who was pregnant with her second child. And he is, he was, is, and was such a light to our family. Um, you know him, he's a goofball. He's,
Oh yeah. I think I have
he's,
a couple that are closely genetically related to him.
yeah, just a few. Um, so I just adopted very quickly, even though it was horrible, this why not me and what can I do to help others, which is why I grieved so and still grieve publicly. I've been able to help way too many, and at the same time, probably not enough people with this type of loss because I've gone through it, so I know what they're feeling and how isolating it can be. So it's that it's truly just the why not me? Why not?
I really like that. Why not
Yeah.
me? I It's funny. I myself have some survivor's guilt, and I deal with that survivor's guilt a lot. And sometimes it's not even survivor's guilt. It's that I did okay in life guilt, because I see
Yeah.
other people that have been through the same circumstance as me that are barely holding it together. And half the time, but you know, the fact that you chose to recognize that and then turn it around and share your mother's love with everybody like you have, that's one of the reasons why you're such a hero to me. Because you didn't turn the spigot off of love, but you just turned it around to the world. And I know Cash experiences that through you on a regular basis because you do so much cool stuff. Yeah, I think we're to healing path. And please, that we'll go into advice, for anybody to start with later. But if you wouldn't mind walking us through, and I probably need to preface it by saying I don't think healing paths are ever over. I don't think
No.
any of us will ever hit a day where we're like, oh my gosh,
I'm
I'm
done.
perfectly okay now. Peace.
No, never.
And I think sometimes people try to act like that's a thing, like you're going to finish a cognitive behavioral therapy session probably feeling better and probably more capable of dealing with stuff, but it doesn't make the weight just disappear from your shoulders. But
No,
so I do want to preface that so nobody, is given a false hope, because that false hope can be crushing to people too when they're like, hey,
absolutely.
it's been 10 years, I'm still sad. Now there's a whole new period of darkness. But if you don't mind just talking through your healing path and where you're at and what you do for it. Um,
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start by 100% agreeing as emphatically as I can that it is never over. It is, I've even written about it. Grief is a lifelong companion. Sometimes you meet grief I call grief a her because I am a her. I wrote one time about how in the beginning grief is kind of like the enemy. Like you try to fight it and you hate it and you never want to acknowledge that she's there. But the sooner that you acknowledge grief as a constant companion and recognize that it is just love, the easier your healing journey becomes. So I started this healing lifelong journey of by going to therapy and working through the PTSD part specifically. Like I said, my sister was pregnant and I knew I would be going to the hospital, specifically the labor and delivery section, pretty quick after I have Kash. And I knew that that would be very, very traumatic for me. And so I worked really hard on being okay. Just being okay. I was very lucky in that my therapist specialized in post-traumatic stress disorder and grief. And she was using a technique where you do a timeline of your life and you realize that the moment that happened is really small. Even though it feels like the end of the world, it is a moment. So you start with your whole life history up to the moment, and then you go past it. And then as you continue going, you realize that it really does just become a moment, even though it's forever a part of who you are and literally ingrained in you. It's not the end, it's just a dot in the line of your life. And that was very helpful to me. Another thing that I did, I wrote, I write. I write letters, I write notes, I write blog posts. I need to get my words out, and writing is the most concise way for me to do that. So I wrote a lot about everything I was feeling. I still write about how I feel. I wrote about the day I had him. I wrote about I found a piece of tempered glass one day, and I wrote about the symbology between how I was feeling at the time as a whole piece of glass that was just shattered but still whole. I just wrote, and I found a community, part of which came from your wife, of other mothers who had experienced this loss. Some of them, it was not as far along. Some of their stories are so much worse, and it's not a competition, but it is great for perspective when you realize that I was very lucky in that I was only in labor for 12 hours and he came out in one piece and he looked like a healthy, perfect, normal baby. And a lot of women don't get any of those things, and that's something I have a lot of issues with, but I can't change. I also found that through sharing my story so openly, other people would come to me, and this is probably my favorite part of my healing journey. They would come to me and say, "Hey, my friend just told me that she had a stillborn. What do I say to her? How do I help her? Can you go help her? Can you go talk to her?" Or they themselves would say, "Hey, this is what just happened to me. Help." And so I've been able to meet a lot of mothers and a lot of angels, and I remember all of them. I know their names, I know their birthdays, I know their families. They're not all stillborns. Some have birth defects that prevent them from living after they're born, so they are born and then pass away. Some of them are unlucky and have to just wait until a certain point in their pregnancy to deliver. So that has been for me, and I know that that's very difficult. I completely understand and recognize how hard it is to put yourself into a situation where you're actively walking into the worst day of your life to help someone else. But that has been one of the most healing parts, is creating a community where women and men know that they can come to me and say, "How do I help my friend? How do I help my sister? How do I help myself through this situation?" And it is
That's
ongoing. It never ends.
Yeah, no, I remember I had no idea what to do when we had our first miscarriage. And I think 6, the final number. But I went and bought a card and I didn't know what to do and ended up giving April a card. And then I found out that a card was probably not the best thing to have done. And it would have been better of me, I think, to have reached out to someone who had experienced something first before I started making haphazard moves to try to be supportive. I wish I was taking notes during this, but then I remembered that we're recording, so I can go back and reference all this wisdom that, I mean, you have gained many lifetimes worth of wisdom. And the fact that your healing path includes helping others heal is awesome. I think we must be related or something, because
Yeah.
I'll be totally honest. When I work with veterans who are struggling, and when I get the calls from family members and they say, hey, I've got a insert relationship here who's a veteran who's going through this, that, and the other thing, to me, it's a little bit of an energy boost. Like, oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Let's reach out. Let's try to get in front of this and see if we can save a life,
Yeah.
So
It really is an energy boost. As sad and horrible as it is, it's very much like, I went through this, so let me help you go through it better. Like, let's get you to the other side of it, not you're stuck here alone and abandoned. I got you.
it must be wonderful for people to be able to confide in you and to talk to you, especially in those tough moments. Do you have any, I'm going to go into advice in a second, but what about husbands, family, friends? Like, how would you suggest right off the bat to give support to somebody who is in a loss situation?
So this is, I get this question a lot, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
A lot of it depends on the person, but the majority of it is the same. Tell them you love them and just show up. As uncomfortable as you are, their discomfort and grief is so much heavier than the discomfort that you're feeling that it does not matter. They're just glad that you're there. Even if you just sit with them, or you send them a message, or you go visit someone that they love with them, like, just sit with your discomfort to let them feel normal. And it's hard, and it definitely takes work. It's, especially if it's around death or suicide. I've had a few friends whose family members have committed suicide, and I have then been in the situation where I have to put myself in the uncomfortable place to be there for them and say, I don't know what you're going through, but I love you, and I love your brother or your father or your sister, and I am here for you in this moment, kind of whether you want me to be or not. Like, I love you and I want to support you, and I'm going to do it in the way that I know how, which is just by being here until you tell me not to be.
All right. That is a wonderful answer, and I think it takes some of the weight of trying to do something right off of our shoulders, because I don't think there's ever a right when you're being genuine.
Someone reaches out and asks for help. That's what I want. I want someone to not feel as alone in whatever way they're feeling alone.
That's my whole purpose of this podcast, is not just to try to spread hope, but more importantly, to try to help people network into things. Certain groups, it's the antithesis to a struggle sometimes to involve yourself with more people, especially if you're just naturally not a people person.
Yeah.
And so the last thing you're like is, I need to go be with people, but I'm an introvert. Most are like, not an introvert. I'm totally an introvert. And I force myself to go play open mics, and I force myself to do music because that is my happy place. And if I don't force myself to do it, I fall off. And
Yeah.
I'm sure it's similar in your world.
Yeah.
So anything else on your healing path that you'd like to cover? I mean, what do you do? What do you do when there's a hiccup? And I think you talked to this already, but
I was just gonna say, on the days where it feels like you can't get out of bed or like it just happened, because those days do come. They're not as frequent years later, but they are still there. Remember that it's okay. It's okay to have a hiccup. It's okay to feel all of the emotions that you're feeling. Right after, I think it was the first Christmas, second Christmas, one of the first two Christmases, I learned that Yankee Candle puts pictures on candles, and I thought that was super cool. And so I went and got a whole bunch of red candles with Cash's picture on them because his birthstone is Ruby. So it's the middle of winter and all the candles smell like apples, but it is what it is. And the lady who helped me, she told me that she, 28 years before the day that I met her, lost her son Matthew to sudden infant death syndrome. And she had never thought that anyone would be so open or so bold in their grief process. So let other people tell you how to grieve or how not to grieve or when or whether or not it's appropriate to cry or not cry or honor someone in a way that you feel they should be honored because it's your relationship with them. It's your grief, it's your journey. It ultimately doesn't matter what other people think. You're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you. So if you feel better posting, if you feel better never talking about it, if you feel better talking to some people about it, you do what feels right for you, but don't let other people dictate your grief.
And on that note, I'm assuming you've had some experiences with people going about handling your grief the wrong way. Do you mind?
Oh, yeah.
without naming names, I mean, can you talk about some of the difficulty that you've had to deal with that involves people? Because
yeah.
I know just one for me out there. I put a pretty personal article out there at one point and released a song. It ended up in the news and very positive. I tried to get very deep about my own struggles and the fact that I was law enforcement and military. And there was this one comment that really hit me. A person put a comment on one of the sites it was at, and somebody chose to highlight it to me. Like, wow, that person has hero disorder. That person certainly shouldn't be anywhere near the military or law enforcement. Like people in our field don't also suffer from vicarious trauma.
Right.
I was like, gosh, I mean, I made it to retirement, so I must have been doing something right. But I remember that one really hurt. It caught something in me. So is there anything like that out there that has been done wrong in your case?
So I was raised Mormon and there were several friends and family who said to me that I lost Kash because of the way I was living my life. Because I wasn't married to his father and I wasn't going to church. That one was tough because I know that that's not why he passed away, A, and B, don't ever say that. That is 100% the wrong thing to say to anyone. That was a hard one.
I mean, I kind of want to go punch those people.
Yeah, it's hard to not when they say it to you. Like you're a little. First, you're shocked, like that someone has the balls to say something that insanely personal, but B, that they said it. Like it's so that one was definitely the hardest because it came from people that know me personally. Like that one didn't come from strangers. That came from people who know me and love me, quote unquote. Like that's what made that one hard.
Yeah, I'd like to hope that probably nobody who would be that emotionally ignorant probably listens to podcasts about hope or resilience. But if you're out there, think twice before you say something like that to somebody in a lost situation. That is tone deaf and horrible.
And maybe you're here because you did say something like that and you were met with a much worse consequence than someone just not talking to you forever again. Like,
and in all seriousness, at no point trying to shame anybody who's trying to provide support. But if you do catch yourself off the point like that, it's a good time to reassess. And I'm pretty sure an apology would have been pretty helpful in your case. I'm just guessing.
For sure. Never got an apology for those comments. I had to just make peace, which took a long time for me to make peace with the fact that they were doing it from what they thought was love and understanding, and they didn't mean to be insulting, but I did let them know that it hurt and it wasn't at all an appropriate thing to say, and it eventually turned into a teaching moment, but the moment it was said was very much not that way.
I think I remember back in the day you mentioning, and this was a long time ago, you'd mentioned that to me in a social setting, and it's just jarring to think that somebody would think that that's a helpful or necessary or wanted. I mean, that's almost an incursion into your space. Okay. Well, lastly, Kristen, what advice do you have for folks going through loss now and the years afterwards? The floor is yours. Whatever you've got that's helpful. And I think you've already dropped so many precious pieces of wisdom in this, but what would you say to them if you're looking right at somebody?
I think that the biggest thing that I would say to anyone who is struggling with loss or grief or going through a trying or difficult time is that you are absolutely not alone. And your friends and your family, they might not know how to help you because it is not talked about. It is not something that people brag about. It is not something that people teach classes on. No one knows how to ask for help, but no one knows how to give help. And I think the two go hand in hand. So I think that just remembering that you're not alone and that it's okay to have your bad days and it's okay to ask for help will get you through the bad days. I know that I'm very blessed, and I can go to so many people in my life and say, hey, it's not a good day for me. Like, I can't do today. I do it a lot to my sister who had my nephew 52 days after Kash. And I'll just be like, I can't look at the family thread today because we've had multiple sets of cousins who are born about 2 months apart. And it's hard still to this day to see that nephew of mine grow up without Kash. And so I can go to her and say, I can't do this today. I can't respond. I can't look at it. It's not fair. It's never going to be fair. And she can say, I'm sorry, I love you, I understand. Or she occasionally will text the rest of the family and be like, we got to move this to somewhere else. It's too much. I'm also very lucky in that my family and Derek's family, extended and immediate, all very much keep Kash a part of their lives. If your family doesn't, what I would say to you is you can reach out to me and know that I will include that loss in my family. I'll text you on their birthday. I will celebrate them. I will release balloons. I will honor them in whatever way you ask me to, because you do not need to go through this alone. And yes, everyone grieves differently, but as the person who has suffered the most loss, not that others have not also suffered the loss of Kash, his grandparents and cousins and uncles, they should follow your lead. And if they don't, keep doing it anyway. And if it makes them uncomfortable, they can be uncomfortable, but you get to grieve that loved one however you see fit.
That is awesome. I want to end this cast the same way, and I just want to tell the entire world how lucky we are to have you, and how lucky that that you're here to tell your story, and that you're here with us, and that you didn't take a car off of a cliff, because I can tell you, it's all about me, so I would be very deprived, but I know that Derek would not be able to make it without you. I mean, you've been significant in his life, and there's this all the people you've helped and your family and this huge trickle down of you still being here that matters so much. So thank you for finding hope. Thank you for being so wise and such a hero to me. And thanks for your time. And thank you for sharing your story today, Kristen. Thank you very much. And we're going to honor Kash. And at the very end of this, for people to reach out to you, are you okay if I put your Facebook, or how would you like to have people be able to reach out to you?
Facebook, Instagram. I'll respond to those messages. If it takes me a few days, it's because it went to a spam folder. You can reach out on my personal one, or I can give you the Kash page, which I do so monitor. Love being able to help people and say their baby's names, or their brother's names, or their grandson's names. It is hard, but worth it.
I don't know if we told you, but Autumn took it upon herself to name all 6 of our angel babies. And so, and that's my oldest daughter. So right now up on our bookshelf, in our we have this little special like religious and family spiritual section. And right there is the 6 names, and those names matter. They really do. It changed how we remember them and incorporate them into our family. So
it does. They matter. Words matter.
Yes, they do. Well, thank you, Kristen, very much. And go ahead.
This is going to sound silly, but I've been really struggling with this. I don't feel like I'm a hero because you are a hero to me. I've known you most of my life, I can say at this point. I've known you from not so fun, a little bit scary Mike to to the Mike you are now. And so I was really struggling with like a imposter syndrome, I guess, because I know that there are some incredible people in your life, and I am honored and blessed that you have shared their stories with me. And so to be considered a hero by you has it's very, very sacred to me. So thank you.
Yeah.
Very much.
Well, you have done everything that a hero can do to become a hero. I mean, the fact that you've turned it around, and that you've helped so many people, and you're going to help so many more, and that you do that just out of the goodness of your heart. I mean, I'm always amazed by people that do stuff for free and just because, like, volunteer firefighters are heroes, and people that serve in the military without being drafted are heroes. It's like little heroes, stuff.
Yes.
But in particular, people that take on life-altering challenges, and I won't say conquer them because you carry them, but survive. They are creating bridges of hope that other people can follow, and that's the purpose of this. So you've created a massive bridge and a way forward for people who are struggling, and that's what makes you a hero as far as I'm concerned. And you'll always be my hero.
You're always my hero.
Sing sad songs till the church bells tone, and I leave this devil behind.